All right. Again, welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for taking the time to do this brief refresher all about Parker Dewey and different ways that we can perhaps collaborate or deepen our collaboration in support of your students, your campus, and perhaps some other initiatives that you have on the radar. This is Kristen Schrader, and I'm really excited to share with you not only this bit of a refresh, but also just some of the different ways that some of our partner colleges, universities, and nonprofits have been able to use this concept as a way to support a bunch of different strategies and initiatives. I realize that many of you became partners about this time last year, give or take a few months, and boy, has it been a year. And so I'm really glad to see the interest in reconnecting and just wanting to hear a little bit more about how this perhaps could be of use to all of you. So give you an idea of where we're going to go for this conversation. We'll start off with a quick refresher, so just some basic nuts and bolts, but as well as a few updates that you may have heard about, you may not have, and so just so you're aware and caught up to speed. But I want to spend the most of our time on part two, which includes a bunch of different ideas for growing your program, engaging students, engaging alumni, engaging employers, a bunch of ideas, and hopefully some of these might give you some ideas for how, as you're planning for the upcoming academic year, for ways that this might be of use for you in your planning. We do have little yellow scrolls like what you see on the upper part of the slide that are littered throughout the presentation that are just designed to give you some action steps or just some ideas for possible items to put on the to-do list. So you can look for those. Yes, we'll send out the slides. Yes, we'll send out the recording. And yes, please go ahead and keep sending whatever questions or thoughts or what have you in the chat. We'll be monitoring that throughout so that we can address those as close to real time as possible so that this can be as useful to you as possible. That is always the goal. And so without any further ado, let's just talk basic nuts and bolts before we get into more tactical strategies. So first of all, how we define micro-internships has not changed and has not changed since we started the concept of a micro-internship now 6 years ago. So short-term paid professional. Yes, these projects typically are between 10 and 40 hours, but some are shorter and some are longer. And so if you do have employers or projects on your radar that have come to mind, we have plenty of projects that exceed that 40-hour, but the key thing is that they are all discrete professional projects. So for example, we had an alumnus at an institution that we're working with this summer that posted a project about 2 weeks ago. This alumnus was an artist and needed some help with setting up her art studio. And while maybe that could be something that is somewhat professional, we reached back out to the artist and said, the alumnus, and just said this may not be the most in line with a professional project. Anyway, the project was pulled and now redefined. So the student that the alumnus is working with is now helping to set up that individual's website. So again, different focus, but more professional projects. But the student walks away with a discrete deliverable that the student can then showcase to a future employer so that it can then hopefully be a segue to a longer term engagement and a line for helping them launch their career. That is always the goal. And then the second point too, I definitely don't want to gloss over, is that every project is paid fairly. That is our primary vetting criteria and something that is fundamentally important to us as an organization in our goal of trying to help bridge the gap from college to career as fairly and equitably as possible. That is something that has only gotten even more on everybody's radar, as it should, over the past year, and something that's critically important to us. And then most of these projects are remote, always have been, and certainly has not changed yet either. But I do want to update you on some numbers because some of you probably can imagine the world of micro-internships has been growing significantly over the past year. We have seen since COVID, so in the past 4 quarters, a 3.7 time increase in the number of micro-internships posted on Parker Dewey, which has resulted in a 5.3 time increase in income. So you can see these projects are getting larger and more lucrative for students, all of which this money is going to your students' pockets as opposed to other places. And we've seen an increase of 327 new companies who have posted micro-internships. And when I first put that slide together about a day or so ago, it was only at 320. So as you can see, it is continuing to grow, and I'm probably outdated by now, so apologies for that. But all of this is just good metrics to know that opportunities are here. I know when many of you first began your partnership with Parker Dewey was in the early days of COVID, and that was a rough time for everything in this space as companies were trying to figure out the status of their internship programs, their budgets, or many companies were furloughed. It was a crazy time. And we saw it too with a lot of organizations that were trying to figure everything out while students were very proactive in trying to find opportunities. And so there was a definite mismatch in those early days, but that has now shifted out and certainly more in favor of your students. So it's a great time to bring this back onto your students' radar if you haven't been doing so over the past year. A few other things to know as well is we recently updated the landing pages for all of our university partners. This is a very manual process. So everyone on this call, your page has been updated. You can see the new look is reason for it. Most important reason is that it's more accessible. We actually had a partner of ours that was visually impaired and went through line by line with our team to say, yes, I can read this. No, I can't read this as well as possible. I don't really know fully what this means. And so with that feedback, we completely redesigned these landing pages so that it's more accessible to those students who are visually impaired or needing to use a screen reader. It's also more mobile friendly, so that's just another little benefit, I guess. But and I know just better organized students are less likely to sign up as companies because there's now those two clear buttons to apply for micro-internships, click here, to post a project, click here. But so that you can see on the right side that there are now a bunch of opportunities for you to update your page with more photos of your students and or campus. So just let us know, check out your page, see if there's any changes that you'd like us to make with those stock photos. And also know that there's a lot of different options for customizing your page. And this is something that I'm sure we talked about when you first launched your program, but may have fallen off the radar. So whether it be the name Micro-Internship itself, as you can see on the left side, we are not married to that. If there's other names that work better for your campus, no problem. We're happy to make it work whatever it needs to be for your student population. And then similarly on the right side, you can see that many schools are opting to add additional sections for special populations such as international students, undocumented students, et cetera. And so we can certainly do that as you see fit as well. So just let us know, and I'm also happy to send you examples of some of these different pages if that would be useful for you. Another quick update. So in January, we launched a newsletter just for students to help give them ideas on how they can be successful on the platform. And it also features specific student successes. So you can sign up for that if you'd like as well. And you'll get the link when we when I send out this recap. But it's also archived. All these different past issues and editions are archived on the Parker Dewey blog. And then students also have an opportunity to submit questions that they have for recruiters, and we get both recruiters and career services to respond to those. So it's been a fun way to just hear straight from the source what is on students' minds, but then also for them to hear from the experts, the employers, and all of you about how they can be successful. So if you'd like to be featured or share your thoughts, again, happy to include you in a future article edition of that. And then we got a bunch of different marketing collateral. You may have noticed we completely re-updated and redesigned our website. So parkerdewey.com looks very, very different. But then we have just a bunch of additional collateral, so social media, more success stories, more email content, et cetera, and a bunch of new project templates, especially in IT and cyber, because we have seen a huge increase in the number of projects in the IT, cybersecurity, and just that whole category of options. students. So if any of these resources and collateral would be helpful to you, like that example on the right side, that flyer, if you'd like to have something like that designed for your students and or for companies and have branded for your school, your URL, et cetera, just reach out, let me know, and we'll be happy to build that out for you. And then again, quick refresher. So how it works for students hasn't changed too much. Real quick and easy to create a profile, upload information about their experience, their education, et cetera. But I do want to point out, if you are sending a refresher to students, remind them that these most important sections by far are the education and the affiliation section. The affiliations is under this about section over here on the first slide. Completing those sections is vastly important because it opens up the maximum number of opportunities that are available to your students. And what I mean by that is we now, as many of you know, have the ability for companies when they post projects to feature those projects to students from certain schools or from certain organizations. So for the example on the left side, that particular project that you see listed under featured, that is only visible to students who attend the University of Vermont, or at least it was when it was posted. Students who go to other schools, you wouldn't see that project. So if you log on as a student right now, every student will see all of the open micro-internships that are open to everybody. And there always are opportunities that are open to everybody. Most projects are open to everybody. But there's been a lot of interesting ways that schools have engaged other constituents, alumni, employer partners, et cetera, in trying to source some opportunities specific for their students. And so again, we'll elaborate more on those best practices later on, but that's been a really great use for this featured projects category, and has really opened up doors for schools that just may not be on organizations' radar to connect in a new way. And then again, you can see the middle screenshot. That's with the company description, the project description, and all the different parameters of that project are listed. And then the right side screenshot, that's how the students apply. They fill out one or more short answer questions. And if you haven't already, feel free to create a student account to see this for yourself, but also it allows you to quickly demo the platform when you're meeting one-on-one with students. And so if they have questions, you can show them, hey, this is how this all works. And oh, by the way, this might be a project that you may want to apply for right now when you are done with this meeting. We see a lot of success with that. And I just wanted to also give you, you'll see this in the results, I'm not going to read these to you, but these are sample application responses that have worked. So this particular micro intern who was selected for this project, this was one of the winning selected project responses. The student has been selected for 6 projects over the past 4 months. And this student has been selected for 6 projects in the past 2.5 months. So you can see that those students who are putting forth the effort are really doing a lot of great things and really being very successful. It all just takes persistence. And so that you know the students' behavior with micro-internships in Parker Dewey, for those students, again, who have experienced this kind of success, they're treating it very differently than how they engage with Handshake, Simplicity, or whatever platform that you have for your students. I remember when I used the Handshake equivalent at my school to get a job or an internship, I was laser focused on that platform multiple times a day, seeing what was new, applying to lots of things, and you know the students who are doing just that. And then once I got my job, once I got my internship, I didn't pay any attention. I didn't go back to those platforms at all. I was good to go. And whereas Parker Dewey and how students are using micro-internships is very, very different. They're logging in every day over breakfast, lunch, whatever, seeing what's new and applying to lots of projects whenever they have the time and or interest or the bandwidth to pursue these different opportunities. We had a webinar with a student panel back in October, and one of the students already had a job with a Big 4 accounting firm, but she wasn't going to start for a few months. So she continued to do several micro-internships during that time. Yeah, it helped the bank account, but it also allowed her to connect with some different employers, broaden her network, engage with new opportunities, broaden her resume, et cetera. I met with a student last night that I'm working with on a micro-internship myself right now, and she's using micro-internships as a way to pay for nursing school. So regardless of the use case, we've got a lot of different students that are just engaging all the time. And so it's just connecting and sharing that with students, that this is an opportunity when you have time. This can be a way that you can essentially create your own opportunities ad hoc, whatever time you have available. And those students who are performing in that way are doing extremely well. Few other changes on our end. So once students are selected, they still receive an email. We did change our onboarding process a little bit so that they now have a litany of different resources on a landing page. You can check it out yourself if you're interested. So they have some quick tips and email templates, etc., and that they also have some advice on how to add this to their resume and LinkedIn profile after they're done with their micro-internship. Now, on the company side, again, not much has changed here. So it's still we handle all of the administrative paperwork. And for those of you, who are trying to figure out, okay, how does this fit into Handshake and everything else that I'm telling my employers to do? We're a very different setup in how we handle and how employers engage, in that we handle all of the admin. The companies don't have to figure out, how do I pay these students? They all are independent contractors of Parker Dewey. So once the company pays the invoice, they don't have to worry about anything else from a legal, HR, or any other standpoint. And again, 90% of whatever the company pays goes directly to the student, which is a significant difference from some of the other gig platforms that are out there that just charge outrageous conversion fees and/or just have a higher margin going towards the company and not towards the pockets of the students. So again, just some differentiators. Low risk, so the companies, if they are in the particularly financial services and/or IT space, are probably very concerned about data and just privacy and those sorts of things. The students do sign non-disclosure agreements. The company owns their work, and we've seen a ton of increase in opportunities once these companies have their lawyers vet the different documentation that students have to sign. They're very comfortable after reading all of that with how they can move forward. We've seen a significant increase in IT and financial services opportunities on the platform, particularly over the past 6 months. And then again, we see upwards of a 98% success rate with these projects, and companies being super happy with the deliverable. And in those rare occasions when they're not, they can either choose a different student or we'll give them a full refund depending on what the company's preference is. But again, we find that the students, as we all know from working with them, they're highly motivated. They tend to do a really, really great job. And so on the flip side, what usually happens is that the company has a great experience and wants to hire the student. And when they do that, there is no conversion fee. They can hire them as an intern, full-time employee, et cetera. We want that to happen, and we don't want to get in the way of that. So there's not a temp to perm or any sort of cost that ultimately would come out of your students' pockets. That is something that companies can do, and we ultimately want that to happen. Again, from the company's perspective, this is a bit different from certainly when you may have first heard about Parker Dewey, and that companies now can limit their projects to certain schools, but this is how it looks like from their perspective. They can outline their project scope, and then they can indicate that they only want it to be visible to X number of schools or X number of organizations, and they can choose as many schools or as few as they'd like, or they can make it open to everybody and not choose any school or organization at all. And by the way, if you're not familiar with the affiliations category, those are nonprofit organizations that we work with, such as United Negro College Fund, Dell Scholars, the Dream.us, and a number of others that are also committed to helping transition from college to career as fairly as possible. And so those organizations are also engaging their students and or employers. And so the affiliations allow those companies to identify those students who are part of those organizations. Also know there's no cost for companies to post a project, and so they certainly can do that at no risk. And then the companies only see those who've applied. So we're, again, not a resume database. They can only see those who submitted an application. They'll see those short answer responses first. And even if they did open it to everybody, they can still filter by school or those organizations and a few other categories. What is important to note, though, are those categories that are not listed, such as major or GPA. I just got off the phone with a school about an hour ago, and that was a big aha for them. The student population they're really focused on is the students from underrepresented backgrounds, maybe early career students or first-gen students that are just very nervous about connecting or standing out with companies. And so the not having a filter for GPA and major has really helped to open companies' minds to students that they're otherwise missing, because they'd only recruit students from certain schools or from certain majors or from certain GPAs. And what we're hearing from companies, with everything being virtual last year, it's only become even more competitive trying to reach the exact same students. And so companies are telling us, hey, we have to keep on increasing our GPA minimum so that we can get through all of the students that have applied. Well, this is a way where, give them a project, give them a chance to show what they can do, and that's really allowing these students from various backgrounds to shine, and again, the students that otherwise may have been missed. Yes, companies can and do give feedback at the completion of the project. Happy to share this feedback that we receive about your students as well. This is something, though, that we're looking at and refreshing over the summer, but this is what the form looks like right now. Just a general summer project for us, so, is to redesign some of these different feedback forms so that it aligns more closely with the NACE competencies. Those were newly published. But again, I want to give you a snapshot of what that is right now. And of course, happy to give you data about your students' engagement. So if you're curious to see how did the past year or so go with your students' level of engagement and success with these opportunities, maybe you promoted us quite a bit, maybe not so much, but at least you can get a sense of what the student uptake was. And we can also share with you those employers who have worked with your students, their feedback, and et cetera. If you're interested in receiving this on a regular basis, that's something we can set up for you. Most schools are asking us for this on an ad hoc basis, so literally just send me an email and we'll get it to you. But if you are really interested in receiving this more regularly, for example, quarterly, again, just let me know and we're happy to set that up for you. So that's just a quick rundown. A lot of that I'm sure you've already heard before, and there might be a few nuggets here and there that were new. So I want to spend most of our time talking strategically, tactically, about different ways that you can grow your program by engaging your various constituents. Again, if you have questions, please send them to the chat. Be more than happy to answer those as close to real time as I possibly can, because again, want to make sure that this is helpful to you as much as possible. So let's start with students. Biggest thing with students is to just be talking about this. From what we've seen, those schools that have had students who've been very, very successful, they have it very visible. They're talking about micro-internships. So it's on their website, in the career tools resources section of their main career services website, but they also have it in Handshake, Simplicity, or whatever other platform that they're using as both a resource as well as a permanent posting within those platforms that tie back to the school's landing page, so that it's not a specific micro-internship that's posted there, because those can go outdated very, very quickly. Keep in mind, micro-internships tend to get posted and filled within a matter of a couple of days. So as soon as you post a project, it will probably be filled. So I don't recommend that. But a permanent posting just saying, hey, check out micro-internships, can be a really great way to draw students' attention to these opportunities. And then including this in the internship section of your website, and you can see an example from Brandeis within your LMS. So if you still are mostly serving students online, so whether you're using Blackboard, D2L, or whatever platform for your learning management system, having it as an announcement, sharing this with faculty so that they can promote it with their students, et cetera. And we're also seeing a lot of success when students know that their classmates, their fellow students, have been successful. So for example, there's an article that Boston University wrote about one of their students who completed a micro-internship about last fall. We're seeing a lot of success when micro-internships are added to presentations just about internships in general and how you can gain experience. Florida International University, they've had a student, Beth Zucchini, who's done, 8 or so projects in the past 6 months or so. And we actually profiled him ourselves just a few months ago. And so Beth now is an active guest speaker in those different presentations that FIU is, again, allows the students to hear straight from the source that how to be successful and what it takes. And so if you are interested in adding micro-internships to your presentations, let me know. We can send you a slide deck or host a session even for your students, if that would be helpful, a session that can be recorded and repurposed at any time. I really do encourage you, though, think about your faculty, those faculty who are teaching classes right now, but also who are strong allies of your department. Just last week, we have a school that we worked with that has just 1,600 students, and that's the whole institution. And they were able to get a company that posted a project exclusively for their students. And so shared it with the contact that we have there. And within 24 hours, there were 5 students that had applied for that micro internship. And this was last week, so in the middle of summer. And when I reached out to the school and said, hey, can you explain, what you have? This is a great success, great response. They said, I mentioned something to a few key faculty members and that are teaching classes, and they promoted it. Our faculty are very much have our students' ear. And so I'm seeing that a lot, especially with liberal arts schools, smaller schools just in general, and community colleges, because again, your faculty members can be really strong allies. So, sharing this with them, they tend to really get it once they have a chance to hear more about it. And then lastly, of course, social media. We've got a lot of different resources that I mentioned earlier that have newly been developed. So if that's helpful, feel free to use any of those. They've all been recreated, and we've got the language all there for you, whether you're looking for something for LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, but you can change any of it. So you don't have to start from scratch. I met with a school just yesterday that said, yeah, we don't have a whole lot for July. So, okay, great. This is an option that you can promote all year round, but especially in those off seasons where this might be a good way to just re-engage those students who are still checking out your different channels. Now I want to turn a little bit of attention to the companies because they can be a bit of a tough nut to crack. There's so many different companies. And what we have seen, as you can see from the numbers that I shared earlier, is that their awareness of and responsiveness and interest in micro-internship has increased significantly over the past year. And when we ask, okay, what are some of the reasons? Why do you like micro-internships? There's several different cases. So early access to students, the freshmen, the sophomores, particularly for those organizations who have a really strong relationship with company or with certain campuses. They only recruit at X number of schools. This is a way to get on those target schools, students' radars as early as possible to just rise up from the rest of the noise that they're going to get when they're further on in their academic journey, to start to build that brand awareness early on with an authentic way to connect with these students. But then that third piece is really key, diversity. As I mentioned earlier, that has been a huge, whether you're reading NACE or really any publication, how do we go into hiring and how to create campus environments that are just more open and accepting of individuals from a variety of different backgrounds. And what we have seen is that companies have always been doing things the same way. They've always gone to career fairs. They rely on you to tell them, how do we best connect with your students? But that there's a huge population of students that they're missing because there's students that just can't go to the career fair, that can't do a summer internship, that can't give up their job because they're already working in order to do something that there's no guarantee of a long-term full-time job, or they can't do anything that's unpaid and so on. And so what we found is that those companies that try out these short-term projects, it is an option that students can fit into their schedule, but especially for those companies that have never recruited at your school, who have never recruited that major, never recruited that GPA or whatever, this gives them a chance to really see what those students can do. And as you can see from these 2 quotes, it's been extremely successful. So Shannon from Train Technologies, she's done a number of different projects and is now launching a company-wide initiative where it's the feedback she's received, greatest source of innovation that I've seen in a long time. And so really very impressed. And I'll share with you a couple of examples of some of the different things that they've been doing in a moment. And then FleetCor. So it's an interesting story. Keegan at FleetCor first came to us because he was an alumnus who was posting projects for his alma mater, and that was how we got connected to his alma mater. He posted a project, and none of the students from his alma mater applied because they didn't know about micro-internships. But long story short, they've now become one of our strongest partners, all thanks to an alum just saying, hey, I want to connect with students from my alma mater as a way to give back. Well, now Keegan's been in a number of other different companies over the past few years and is at FleetCor and has brought micro-internships to this logistics company and has continue to choose students from his alma mater. But when he can't find the students that are a good fit or needed more students, he's also been able to identify students from, as he said in his quote here, from places I otherwise wouldn't have known to look. And they've been doing a really, really fantastic job, because as we all probably know, there are great students everywhere. They just need to be given a chance to shine. And so, just to give you a few examples of some of the different companies that are doing large-scale programs and a large number of micro-internships, Train, as I mentioned earlier, they started off with more of a campus ambassador type of role, but have now done a bunch of different types of projects within their HR team, within their early recruitment. So, for example, they have a strong relationship with Purdue. They also have a strong relationship with University of South Carolina, and so they've been, and Michigan State's another one of their target schools, and have been doing initial programs specifically to build their relationship with students at those campuses. So those of you who have strong employer partnerships, this might be a way for them to, again, strengthen their brand, to cut above the noise. Nobody's ever heard of Train. They immediately think of a locomotive, or they think of their air conditioning system that probably doesn't get them too jazzed. And so this is a way, again, for them to start to get to know this company that is doing a lot of really, really exciting things for students across all different academic programs. Staples, another example. We've all heard of Staples probably and have been into a store, but they were really looking at building brand awareness, corporate, not so much in their various retail stores, and trying to connect to a broader student population. So they're headquartered in Massachusetts. They had a nice brand and different relationships within the state, but our contact actually is in California and has been connecting with students nationwide and working with various different initiatives and various departments company-wide, has been posting different projects with students across the country. And then one of our newest employer partners, Xylem. So that was a very, very fast conversation that rose all the way up to their CEO. And I don't know about you, but I have never heard of Xylem before, about a month or two ago. But they are one of the largest water purification companies. They're a multi-billion-dollar company doing a ton of amazing work in water technology, trying to bring just higher quality, just better water to populations worldwide. So if you have students that, certainly in chemical engineering and different programs like that, or just those interested in environmental science, or just have a really strong passion for equity, access, and trying to give back, while also doing whatever it is that they ultimately are going to school for, a company like Xylem, probably not on their radar, but through a micro-internship can help them to understand that this is a really, really interesting way to get started in HR, in legal, or in engineering, or what have you, but then also to contribute to a company that's very mission-focused and doing some really important work. A few other thoughts when it comes to employers. And again, what we're seeing, companies have specific goals. They want to engage students. Most have some sort of diversity-related goal, and they want to build their brand. But they've been under a lot of pressure and have had to be very dynamic this year, and have spent their money in a lot of different ways. So they, as you may or may not be aware, in order to have that premium access account to Handshake, Simplicity, or some of these other platforms, they have to pay for that. So whether it be sending emails to your students, buying lists of your diverse students, paying third parties for various ways to have their brand on campus, and all of that money is going towards those companies that are, doing a number of different things. But with micro-internships, a bit of a shift in that model. In that, with micro-internships, money goes to your students, and your students gain experience, and more of your students are getting hired, because this is adding to your annual report. I worked with a school last Friday and spent about 45 minutes with them just breaking down, these are different ways that micro-internships can attribute to some of your different accreditation metrics. And so, with sharing this with your employer partners, this is a way to more directly affect your metrics, but also to more directly impact your students. They're getting a lot of emails already. They're burned out from it. And so, this is, but companies don't realize that there's other options out there unless you share it with them. So whether they're sharing it or offering projects specifically to underclassmen, to student athletes, diverse students, your grad students, certain populations, you name the goal, but just letting them know about it. And it's also what the students want. We did a survey last summer of over 3,000 different current students, undergrad and grad, and by far the biggest thing that they said they wanted was more experience so that they could get their foot in the door. And this is especially in light with COVID and everything, that they really needed that experience. But I don't think these results have changed that much. Students are still hungry to put what they're learning in the classroom to work. And they really want, of all the different ways to connect with companies, that real work experience is by far the most value added for them. Company websites, info sessions, career fairs, that's just not doing it for them. They really want that chance to connect real time. But also thinking about those company dollars, they've been allocating those a lot of different ways. And so, sharing this with them allows more of those dollars to come back to your students, your institutions, through sharing it with them. List it prominently on their website. You've got a couple of examples there. University of Florida and Marshall, as you can see from these examples here, have some really good examples of employer-focused websites, and you can certainly check those out if that's helpful. But sending information about this to all of the employers in your database. What's nice about this idea is that if it's, say, November, and all of your career fairs have come and gone, but you're still wanting to reach out to your employer partners, this can be a way to disengage them. Or thinking about, say, August, and before you start communicating about your career fairs, you could encourage them, hey, if you do a micro-internship, that might help you start to identify those students who are really excited about opportunities at your company, even before you go on campus for the career fair, or you connect virtually via a virtual career fair. And these projects can be completed year-round whenever these organizations have the need. There's also opportunities for engaging those smaller companies, those who aren't able to come to your career fair because they don't have an internship or a full-time hiring need. But connecting with your Chamber of Commerce, your startup or entrepreneurship center on campus or within your community, and I'll share some more examples of that in a moment. This tends to be really, really successful as a way to have these small companies connect with students that are already there. And most people work for small businesses anyway. This is just allowing companies a way to start connecting to early talent, to your students that maybe just don't have the network or the ability or just the knowledge of what opportunities are available with these smaller organizations. And then lastly, one of the easiest things that you can do when you're emailing employers about ways to connect with your students, or if you're doing a workshop or some other conference for your employers, add information about micro-internships. I know I get a lot of those emails as it is. Sometimes we're mentioned, sometimes we're not. But this is just an opportunity that's real quick and easy to add that can at least help to just bring awareness about these opportunities to generate more options for your students. And speaking of more options and more valued, okay, got a question here. Is there an automatic way that the career office can be notified as projects are posted so we can do outreach to faculty? Absolutely. Whenever we have projects that are posted that come from your landing page, or if you have an employer-focused landing page, we send those to you with specs about that particular opportunity. We send that to you same day so that you can be aware of those and then share it with your students, with faculty or whoever on campus would want to know and promote that. So thank you for the question. And yes, absolutely. We're more than happy to share that with you. We can also always give you an update of those companies who've signed up, but maybe haven't posted a project, because that might be an opportunity to re-engage them or just reach out and find out if they're still interested. So yeah, great question. Going back to the idea of just generating more options and more revenue for your institution, we hosted a number of webinars and roundtable conversations last month, all about sponsorships and trying to just identify what are the value that companies have from sponsorships, and what are some of the different package contents, et cetera. And what we've found is that brand awareness and trying to be able to recruit more students, that's obviously the big reasons that companies try to sponsor and have these target schools that they sponsor. But with COVID, a lot of those dollars dried up. And so that's been a big loss of revenue. And from what we've heard from companies, what we've seen in the industry publication, the dollars are still there. They're just going to other places. They're just going to more places where companies can buy lists of students, send more emails, et cetera. But they're not going to the schools and they're not going to your students. Well, micro-internships can change that. And so a sponsorship initiative might be a way to bring more of those sponsors back, and might be a way to certainly generate more revenue for your institution and or revenue for your students. And let me elaborate on that. So it adds more value to sponsors, so they get a chance to get in front of whatever populations of students that they're interested in. It gives them support for hiring managers that already have too much on their to-do list, more opportunities and paid experience for students. And even if your events are virtual, a lot of those value adds for virtual career fairs, virtual info sessions, that doesn't necessarily allow them to increase their brand awareness, recruit more students, because students are just so burned out. Who can blame them? We're all burnt out from these virtual events. And so this is a new way for them to get in front of students, even if you are still doing virtual events next fall or however long that you'll be doing this, or a hybrid event, et cetera. So what does this even look like? Well, this is a package that you can offer as part of your sponsorship program, or maybe it'll be a new program for you. It can be set at whatever dollar value that you want. This example is $5,000. It doesn't have to be that, but basically, half of which goes to the school, half of which goes to funding micro-internships for your students at those sponsoring companies. And again, this can be set up a number of different ways. Maybe you already have a robust sponsorship program that, maybe it's a $10,000 sponsorship. I know one of the hesitations that I hear with this program is, okay, but that money wouldn't necessarily go to us. It'll go to our students instead, which, okay, that's good, but we need the revenue as well. We don't think of this as a loss to you. We've seen organizations that have added micro-internships as an add-on, that have engaged new sponsors that otherwise would not have engaged through these different packages. And again, their students are benefiting, and you're still obtaining revenue as well, because there's more benefits that companies are gaining from this. And we have a toolkit that elaborates a little bit more on this, but another idea is that these sponsors, or whatever these key target companies, so that they can get that brand awareness, they can be added to your university landing page. So that when students are signing up, or they're signing up maybe for the first time this fall, or you're re-engaging them this fall, they will see now those companies' names right front and center, so they know which companies to look for when they're looking at these different opportunities. Oh, and by the way, Staples or Eaton or whoever the companies are, they can have their own sub pages, which you can also share the data with them, so that you can then share metrics so that they know that that Staples page had X number of clicks. So clearly students are excited about working for Staples. So that's all metrics that you can market and share with these organizations, so that they can know that they are getting a quantifiable return on the investment, in addition to being able to connect with your students via the micro-internships and the value of the quality of work that your students are providing in that project. Now, I apologize, there was a question that came through. So does the student newsletter go to all students in the database? Yes, every student that has created a student account. So if you already have a student account, or you don't have one yet, you'll be added to the listserv. But if for whatever reason you're not receiving it, you can certainly sign up via the link that we'll share in the slide deck. So again, hopefully these ideas are helpful from sponsorship or just employer engagement. Also know if these companies, these employer sponsors, are interested in getting in front of your students, that's a very dynamic list. So for example, if Staples commits to posting micro-internships during fall semester, great, but maybe they don't have any projects come 2022, no problem. We can cycle them onto, take away their little logo there and shift into somebody else, and they can change the order. So it's really up to you. Just let us know who you want to have focused there, and we're happy to work with you in building out these different pieces of collateral so that these resources can be as useful as possible. And again, full transparency, there is no cost to your institution for offering this program. So whatever portion that you allocate towards your institution of the sponsorship package, that is all entirely yours to keep and do with as however you use sponsorship revenue. There are only cost to this is just 90% of the micro-internship dollars that those go to your students. At 10% we retain, again, just to cover our costs of having your students on our books, but 90% of that $2,500 in this example goes to your students for those micro-internships. And that's it. And any of this additional collateral, et cetera, we're happy to build out for you at no cost. And give you an example as well. So one of our nonprofit partners, the Women Association of Venture and Equity, or WAVE, they launched a micro-internship sponsorship program earlier this year. They found that revenue was down for sponsorships, and they wanted some way to attract new sponsors. And so far, this has been just that. They generated additional revenue for their organization that they had lost in 2020, and then they've also provided those opportunities for WAVE students through these micro-internship sponsorships. So we developed a page like this so that they could attract these sponsors, and if something like this would be helpful to you as well, happy to do that. Last idea for engaging companies is just looking at your small business community. We've seen a lot of different partnerships through local chamber of commerce, your small business incubator. The Cincy Tech example is a Cincinnati-focused IT startup incubator. We've worked with the Greater Akron Chamber of Commerce, which was a connection that we established thanks to the University of Akron. We've done a bunch of different things statewide with the state of Kansas and their various chambers of commerce, et cetera. And so these different programs, we're happy to host a webinar. We can establish these different landing pages so these companies can see what sort of projects are of interest. And then we've seen various programs that are focused by and driven by the school. So University of Vermont, they have a huge startup community through their Center for Emerging Technologies and Small Business Development Center. And so they've developed a whole bunch of collateral and just constantly referring small businesses and nonprofits to micro-internships. It makes it real easy for these companies to just post a project. You don't have to worry about the legal and HR and all of that, and you can still do the right thing by posting something that's paid for, and then they can target UVM or other local students if they have affinity for students from certain schools. And then we're happy to not only host those different projects and share it with the UVM students, with their staff, and we also provide data and regular updates so that they can see how many students have signed on and so on, and all these different opportunities that have come from this program. Another program that we're seeing a lot of different traction around is grant-funded programs, and a bunch of different examples of this. The first one was University of Cincinnati. They received grant funding from the Ohio Department of Labor back in 2020. And so through their model, they are allocating grant funding to supporting nonprofit organizations, and the students are doing 80-hour micro-internships. So we're the employer of record, do the invoice, payroll, and all of that support. But this use case has been interesting for a number of different schools that maybe have extra funding in their career services budgets that they're now looking at allocating towards micro-internships so that they can support their students. For one school that we're working with, they don't even want to do the micro-internship piece until the fall, but they have this extra funding, so they just want to not lose that budget. And so that's another option that even if these programs don't kick off right away, that is completely fine and no problem. Happy to launch this whenever it makes the most sense given your various goals and other priorities. Similarly, John Carroll University, they also received grant funding, and their particular model is specifically focused on students from diverse backgrounds, because those are the students that were that are intended to be supported through this this grant funding. So we provided marketing materials and handle all of the different administrative pieces, and then the university is engaging the employers, the small businesses, the nonprofits, in hosting these different micro-internships. So just a couple of different examples, but various use cases that have been helpful. Another school that we're talking with ran a program very similar to the John Carroll program, but they ran it themselves, a very small pilot, but quickly realized that managing the payroll and the administration of it was more of a burden than they wanted to handle, particularly as they look to scale the program. And so we're already set up for that, and that's been a use case that certainly if we can help, we're happy to do so. Our biggest caveat is just making sure that these are paid opportunities so that the students are treated as fairly as possible. And so it's something we're very, very sensitive to from an equity and access standpoint. Which leads me to the last audience that you can engage through these opportunities, and that's your alumni. And this has been a really, really interesting evolution over the past year. The whole reason that we even offer an opportunity for companies to feature their projects specifically to students from certain schools, that came out of requests from our university community who wanted a new way to engage alumni, and who were excited about being able to, like Colby College, say, hey, alumni and parents and other friends of Colby, we need a way to help support the class of 2020 due to COVID. They're going to have a hard time. So Colby reached out to us back in 2020, April of 2020, and we launched this initiative and this page and program for them. And we've since done that with a bunch of other schools. And so if having a page like this to engage your alumni or your employer partners or your small business community or any of these other stakeholders that I mentioned would be helpful, just let me know. And again, there's no cost to it. This page is very versatile. The way that it works is if you have a data visualization project, just click data visualization. Information about that project's pre-populated. You can make whatever edits, but all the hard work has been done for you. What's also been interesting from an alumni engagement standpoint is that this is allowing alumni associations to engage alumni who are really early in their academic journey. So they've just graduated. They don't have the financial resources to write that 4 or 5-figure check. So from a fundraising standpoint, they're just not there yet, but they're still highly engaged. They very fondly remember being on campus, et cetera. And so being able to engage recent grads with something like this, where they can hire a student from their alma mater, they could pay for the project with their company credit card, and then the work gets done. This has been a really great way for these organizations to give back to students, even as early as their first year after they've graduated. And then one other alumni-focused program that we're seeing some really fantastic success with is the Swarthmore College SWATworks program. So this is a program that is open to all current students, where the funding is provided by Career Services. The projects are provided by Swarthmore alumni, friends, parents, so folks in their community. And we're handling the admin, the invoice, payroll, setting up the different websites that you see, pre-crafting projects, reporting, all of that administration we're taking on, and powering this program for them. They reached out to us back a few months ago as they ran this program themselves last year, and it was very, very successful. The alumni were super excited to give back. The students were super excited to do these short-term projects. It just became a big burden for their team to be able to handle all of the admin of this. And so we're taking care of that for them. It started off as a fall pilot, or a summer pilot, and it's already been expanded to extend throughout the fall. And so, this is something that this is what we do. And what's been nice about the Swarthmore program, number of different things. So yes, it engages alumni students and makes it easier for their team, but it also allows students one platform where they can see the Swarthmore SWATworks projects, but they can also have access to and see all in one place those micro-internships that are open to everybody. So those students who are interested in these short-term projects on an ongoing basis whenever they have time, even if they're already doing internships or have summer jobs or other things, they can still be in front of and obtain these different micro-internships if that's something that's of interest to them. And so, again, happy to elaborate if that is something that's of interest or helpful to you as you look at some of your different goals. And then lastly, got a bunch of different schools that are posting projects for themselves. So, for example, Catholic University, they've been posting projects for a year and a half or so, various projects in career services or other teams that they have, and different organizations, nonprofits that are run through the school and so on. JCU, John Carroll, I mentioned already. And again, we're handling the invoice, the payroll, so it's just not something that is a heavy burden or any burden on your university's HR team. What I hear from schools is that paying students for something this short term can just be a big ask for a lot of university payroll systems. And so, we take care of all of that for the school. So again, another idea that is something that is useful. I just got off a call with a school right before this that mentioned working with the diverse population they're working with, and they're primarily focused on, they're really interested in mentorship and trying to establish ways that the students who are first gen or just trying to figure everything out and nervous about relationships and really need some mentors. Well, they even one of the ideas that we were brainstorming is posting projects on campus where the students could work with a faculty member or a staff member or other advisor with these projects. They had that strong mentorship, but then they also have that professional experience that allows them to gain some experience on their resume, and we can handle the administration of it, so it's not any sort of major lift on the university's part. So lots of ideas, and hopefully some of these were useful to you, whether it be reaching out to your students, alumni, employers, lots of ideas. Also, feel free. We are going to be doing a session mid-August. It'll be our big quarterly update, but more importantly, it's going to be focusing on fall and re-engaging students this fall. So if you have new students, if you have students that maybe signed up but just haven't taken a look in a while, just some ideas for how you can get in front of students this fall, maybe even some employers and or alumni and other ideas. But in the meantime, always happy to have a conversation if any of these ideas are useful, and appreciate you taking the time to join us today. So